participants. I was wondering if I get any friendly participants that might be able to just share with me a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you know about sales and what you want to get out of this program. And then I could jump in and start sharing my presentation. But I want to make sure it's relevant and that you go home with value because you did take time out of your day for this.
Well, I'll go first. Um, so my name is Kara Wolf. I'm the founder and CEO of Amelight Security. I'm located in Calgary, Alberta, in Canada. I've been working with Lionfish on CMMC probably for the last year, maybe year and a half. I know Jeremy through Chris Haig. We are just getting up and going with CMMC and the Canadian version CPCSC is just coming into play now. There's a discrepancy in rules, so Canada's working its way through its thing. But now that CMMC is the rule is finalized, we're ready to go. So I'm working very closely with the Canadian federal government in Western Canada to deliver maybe some grant programs to help the defense contractors become compliant with CMMC. So I have been in business development my entire career. There's a little bit of nuance, I think, in selling cybersecurity over, especially consulting, um, over a hard, tangible product. So it's a little bit difficult to explain to people that aren't educated in IT. And where I live, most of the people run manufacturing. They come from oil and gas backgrounds, or they come from other backgrounds other than IT and cybersecurity. So their knowledge of IT is a bill that they need to pay and a server. So we're really starting with educating them from the ground up, and that's taken a lot of time and educating them on the severity of having proper cyber hygiene in place in the first place. So we're probably 8 to 10 years behind the United States in mentality and attitudes. So that's been my struggle. However, that being said, I've also been able to position us as the top expert go-to company in Western Canada. Um, so we're working on getting some major government funding. Hopefully, in the first quarter, we'll have news, and then we'll be able to get up and going with all the work that we've been doing with Lionfish and with Meerkat Cyber in the past year. Thanks for having me.
No, Kara, this is great. And thank you for such a brilliant opening because this really helps me try to take the material that I have and relate it. And if there's anything that I'm missing, stay tuned. We've got two other sessions or we could have additional. But when I meet someone like yourself, it reminds me of a friend of mine that I grew up with that'd been in the restaurant and food business for years, and he was sent to a course and we all laughed like what more could we teach, like can you learn, this person's been in this business for like 40 years, and he said something that struck me. He says, I didn't really learn anything new, but I remembered a whole lot I forgot. And in your case, maybe we could go back to spring training together and just remember some of the nuances and disciplines would be great. Does anybody else want to contribute here just so I get a better feel of where we're going from, what your background is? Are you an MSP as well, or is there any other area? Kevin, Nene, Mark, Ann, love to get some feedback so I know where to go before I jump in. Do we have any other brave souls here? Are we going to leave it on chats?
Sorry, I was expecting just to attend a webinar and not be a participant. So just listening.
I'm sorry, and it didn't come off clear here. What was that? Can you repeat? Maybe lean it in the microphone.
Now, my only point was I was just here to learn. So I wasn't prepared to be a participant, but we have worked with a client to get CMMC certified. So I have a little background. I think you said Meerkat, and we work with them. So I'm just trying to figure out what else I need to do.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you letting me call some people on the spot. We do have a small audience. We're less than 10. And it gets a little dry getting up here. And even though I did carry I was a bellman for 2 years in the Catskills. I still like a responding audience. So, and thank you again. And Ann, where are you located, by the way?
Washington, D.C.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, hopefully the weather is there a bit better than where my friend is in the Midwest here. My friend Jeremy is every other day dealing with snow, and winter's not even here yet. So let's jump into the presentation. We have one more participant that just jumped on. This is a three-part series. First of all, I'd like to thank Jeremy Miller and the Lionfish organization for giving me this platform to help share what I think is about 38 years of professional sales skills that I hope to impart here. Over the next 45 minutes, my objective at the end is to provide a predictable, profitable growth mechanism for your organization. And we are targeting those managed service providers that have, various gifts and talents in the industry that are, focusing in their market. There are three major components that we're going to talk about on this particular presentation, and here's our agenda. We're going to review the seven-stage sales funnel process. We are going to review the Miller-Heiman sales call preparation called the Green Sheet. My disclaimer here is that we're not a franchise owner. This is a tool that I use quite frequently. It's a discipline, and hopefully you can appreciate it. Often when I have a bad sales appointment, I go back and say, did I do the right, you know, preparation? And then I beat myself up of not doing the right homework, and I go back to the basics on here. And then we talk about value-based selling. How do we differentiate ourselves? How do we really get into the buying influencer's mindset? And we're going to provide you some value-based selling through the Lionfish portfolio, in particular, our GRC platform for consulting, which is the Cyber Tackle Box. And then another part is to provide you a tool or access to a tool, our Fusey client relation management system for sales, marketing, revenue generation, operations. It is just vital. So again, if you think about it, we want to give you the concept, teach you the skill, and then give you the tools to go out and deploy. And I would love any feedback. I know some people want to just sit and listen and take it in, but please don't hesitate to make this engaging. And if there's any other topics that you feel like would be pertinent or questions that be relevant to your context, reach out. Just ask. Before I get going further, though, I was just wondering, besides our first brave contestant, but are there any other folks on the line here? Can you just share with me what you know about sales, what you know about business development, and what's your thoughts about it, good, bad, or indifferent?
I'll jump in, Mike, while we're waiting for somebody else. It's often hard to get out of the technical weeds with people and go into that value based piece. That's what's in it for them and how they're going to benefit from working with us, with you. So I struggle with that myself, as you know. So I'm glad you're going through this and talking about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jeremy. And what we're going to do here is teach you that you have great knowledge and skills. But understanding the customer and the customer needs helps you translate what you've got into their world and speaking their language. And that will definitely get us there when we start talking about the green sheet sales call preparation. And the other part I want to share with you is that selling is no different than any other skill that you've developed or knowledge you develop over practice and being intentional, you will get better. I will tell you, there are people with far less experience than I have and are far more successful because they come in with this discipline and this mindset where salespeople are better listeners than they are talkers. And what I find is in this group here is people are excellent at being analytical and understanding it, but how do we turn that into a formal process? And there were two core challenges that we saw out in working with other MSPs. The one is what we call the niche dilemma, articulating your value proposition. What do you do and how do you do it? And what do you do that's so uniquely different? And then the other one is what I call as a target miss, where there's just no formal process, there's no intentional process on going and approaching an opportunity and developing it. And then there's nothing on the back end to capture all this. And this is the part where I ask people, and I'll ask it later on, if you're one of those people that are excellent at collecting business cards and say, I'll get to it later. This is really hot stuff. I'll get to it. But it's still sitting in your either your briefcase or in a drawer on your desk. And it's sometimes a month, 6 months, a year later, and you say, gosh, I forgot to do something with that. And then you remember what you got to do. The other one is maybe you have scraps of paper in different notebooks, and then you're like, oh, I forgot what that email was for, or what that acronym, that initial I put in there for, and I got to follow up. Or maybe you're more advanced and you have a spreadsheet, but you got names listed, but maybe that's all you got is a bunch of names on here, but maybe not a whole lot like a process. So the Lionfish connection here again is we're going to equip you with tools, some skills and knowledge, and give you a supporting plan to move forward. It is our desire, it's our mission to empower, lead, and defend, and that's part of what we're doing here. We want to bridge from where you are now into where we want to go and have a predictable process. So our philosophy on here is don't just react to the threats, we anticipate them. So again, being intentional about the plan and strategic sales requires that same vigilance and preparation, no different when you're doing as a professional MSP to avoid threats, anticipate problems, but now you're going to anticipate what the customer's needs and objections and concerns are. So again, our philosophy here is we're going to come up with a strategy, give you the equipment and the design, and then deploy you to be able to get out there. And on the bottom here, I'd like to share with you, we're going to get into the seven-stage sales funnel process. And I would love to get feedback from anybody besides Jeremy or anybody else that, is anybody familiar with this? And if they're not, please either send a text in the message prompt or feel free to speak out. This is really critical. Is anybody familiar? Is anybody new to this? And if you are, great. There's huge value. If not, there's huge value in reminding what we got here.
Good evening, everybody from sunny Nairobi, though it's at night. My name is Gashushara. I'm calling from Nairobi.
Excellent.
From Nairobi.
I could tell from that thick Brooklyn accent, Nene.
Yes.
Hey. Well, thank you so much for whatever odd hour for joining us. So are you familiar with the sales funnel process?
Not in this kind of sequence, no. Because yes, prospecting is definitely going to be.
Well, first of all, let me applaud you. If you have a process, that's awesome. You have a process, and it doesn't always have to be these seven stages, but these are the ones that I rely on. It always helps me point north when I'm lost. And the idea behind this, Nene and team, is that it provides clarity and predictability of where you are. Has anybody been involved in a conversation and you're like, wow, this person is really interested in my product, my service, because I'm doing all this talking and they're listening. So I'm going to give them a quote, and then someone ghosts you. And you're like, well, gosh, I thought we had this great conversation. I gave them my best price. I followed up and I didn't go anywhere. This process here can help answer some of those questions that you may not have been answered. So the first stage here is prospecting. This is where you identify potential people in your market that you want to go after, but they may not have met you. You've not had initial contact yet. And this is really where you define based on maybe the size, the scope, the number of people, the type of business they're in. But I have identified and say, by B being, Lionfish Cybersecurity, I've identified this person as someone who I think I could bring value to. I'm going to engage them. That's stage one. And this is being very intentional with this stage, because without that, you have a tendency to put this stage off and say, I'll do it later. I've got something else that's got my time and keeping me busy. The next one here is when you have a contact and qualify. This is where you say, gosh, my gut was right on them and I'm talking to them, but are they the right people? Are they in the time frame that they want to do business? Do they have the funding? Do they have the necessary parameters in order for me to be successful with them? And are they willing to engage, and are they interested? And this qualification could be a number of what either market triggers, like my friends that are dealing with CMMC various levels, and that's causing people to come to the table and have to talk to them. Or it could be maybe somebody had a cybersecurity incident and they are on fire and they are in trouble mode, and they needed to go after it. These are things that are qualifiers that say it's these are the people you want to talk to. Needs assessment is where you go in and you have buy-in from them to go in and say, hey, let's talk about what your applications are. What is it you want to do? And I'd like for you all to just think of these three next words and think of the acronym FAA. And it's called fix, avoid, or accomplish. Every one of your customers at some point in time has explicitly stated, or they've been implicit about it, and you brought it out to the table. What is it they need to fix? What do they want to avoid, and what do they want to accomplish? And when they do that, you can now understand what is it your solution that you're going to provide, and you're going to develop what your game plan is before you do that. And this is where you understand the value. And everybody here wants to just get off their seat and talk about what they've got right now. But I would ask you if you would think about um, before you present, do you understand two components with that client? Do you understand what their personal win is and what their business result they want to achieve? One of the challenges we all have as business people when we're talking to a client is presenting that value. That value is easy to represent when you understand two simple components, simple but hard components, which is what is in it for them personally? What is it they do that helps them with their everyday living, their job, their existence with the organization, and what is the business result? And it's usually measured in time or money, and it's usually a very explicit number. How many clients they want to get, how much dollars they want to save, how much money they want to make, but there's usually a very explicit business result. The next one is we get into presenting the solution at that time and what you have. And when you have that value transfer and you understand, there's still opportunity for more questions on qualifying and understanding their needs. And this is where that collaboration and that confirmation is. And you know that they agree that this is the solution. You've understood how it's going to protect their fix, avoid, or accomplish. You clearly understand their business result, what they're trying to achieve, and not only that, what's in it for them personally. And the next part here is presenting your financials. What is your package? What is it that you're offering? Going to contract, gaining that commitment. And the last part is implement and then grow with that client. Because I'm sure many of you know that it's much easier to do business with an existing client in a relationship than take on a new relationship. It's easier or it costs you less to retain a current customer than it is to acquire a new one. And these are the 7 stages that we have here. And we're going to go a little bit deeper in some of these other stages, but this is the process. And to the left here, my good friend here, my Lionfish friend, will show you on top is the larger number of people you interact before you really qualify and understand. And then you get down to the smaller handful that you're actually closing and doing business with. Feel free. Any feedback? Is this anything new? Is it revolution? Is it evolution? Or is it an aha reminder? Love to get your feedback.
So, Mike, I'm not sure if you see this, but they are responding in the chat section. So if you open that up, you'll see what they're saying if you can see both on your screen. Otherwise, I'll relay when somebody types something if they don't want to.
If you don't mind, go ahead and relay it because I don't really have the dexterity of going back and forth between the presentation and the Zoom chat, but feel free to call it out, Jeremy. I'd appreciate the help. And this is great. So thank you very much for the feedback so far. And we'll go to the next slide where we understand the green sheet. Miller-Heiman is an author that I came across probably about, oh gosh, 20 years ago. And it's a technique that in a workshop that I went to probably about 16 years ago. And it is like a blueprint. Now, it is literally a green sheet. You could Google it, you could look it up, and you could see some images and some concepts. And there's a number of people that teach these courses. But real quickly, what we could do at Lionfish is sit down with you and map out before you have a major appointment. What does it look like in order to really strategize? And let me give you the benefit of why it makes sense to do this preparation. First of all, it gives you a method that you can count on to give you that consistency. And it gives you a very high ROI on the time that you're spending with that individual because you answer a lot of questions and you're prepared before you get in the door. So here are some of the highlights here. It gives you focus and clarity. It accelerates the sales process. It really helps you weed people in and out. It maximizes the value that you have in the exchange, and it gives you greater authority and confidence because I will tell you, when you go into a business person and you sit down with an agenda and you have your game plan mapped out on what you want to discuss in your topics, I will tell you the percentage of engagement will be much higher and it will be a huge differentiator than someone that goes and says, well, I know what I want to talk about. I do this every day. It should be easy, second nature. But when you come in with an intentional plan, this is what it does for you. And here are the elements of the green sheet on here that will talk about some of the concepts. And it's one of those where I will tell you, I had been in business for 25 years before I learned this. And even though I've been to professional selling skills and learned the spin method, and I went to Gap and others, it wasn't until I had a documented process that I could map out. If you're like me and you need to externalize your thoughts and map it out, or you're internalist and you're more analytical, like some of my friends on this call, it's great to have it mapped out and listed intentional. And there's some key areas and concepts that I want to get over here because this is the strategic preparation that eliminates a great deal of your sales risks before you go in there. First of all, do you understand what your single sales objective of what you're going in there for? It could change and alter, but do you really know what you're targeting before you get in there? Secondly, in the left on your buying influencers, do you understand who you're talking to and the role that they play and the level of influence they have? Are they a technical user? Are they a user? Or are they an economic buyer? An economic buyer is only the one and only person who cuts the check and has the financial authority to pay you. And sometimes they are also the technical and sometimes the user in the smaller business settings, but in the larger business settings, they're waiting for someone who's got the technical competency to give them the confidence to cut the check. The users are often the people that are doing the day to day. And do you understand what their concept is on how they do business and how they make a business decision? How do they go to contract with other vendors? How do they make decisions and set priorities? And how do they have a process going forward? This is all information that you need to get. And if you don't have it, this is great. Gives you fodder for what your appointment needs to be. Ask before you present your solution. The other part is, what is your valid business reason before you go in and approach this person? Sometimes you might already have a relationship and you're there building on there, but the other valid business reason could be your prospecting. And for like my other friend that opened up the call, she was kind enough to say that, she works with DoD contractors and she's there for CMMC. And her valid business reason is she has a specialty helping DoD contractors retain and grow their business with the government, and they have the expertise to make sure that they're compliant and they can continue to compete in this area and in many times differentiate themselves. And then the next part is, what's your credibility? For example, Lionfish, what I love about being here at Lionfish, there's so many elements of our credibility. We're cyber AB, authorized training provider. We have several designations. We are an online tech school. We are a consulting firm. And the other part that I'm very proud of is we're led by a veteran-owned organization. Jeremy has a background in there, and when I speak to other MSPs with the military background, I find that it's very relatable. Now, I'm a son of a first sergeant, so I don't know the alphabet soup that you all talk about, but I do know that he's Echo 18, which is communications. So, I could talk about that, but it's that credibility that's relatable that someone will have trust because in this exchange, you want to have a trust exchange between who you're talking to and yourself. When you give information, are you intentional about setting it up? Do you know going in there what information you want to give or you typically give? Why and what's the proof source behind it that gives it that credibility? Now, let's get to the other side here, which is getting information, the questioning framework. This is where there's three different types of questions that are often asked, and they're intentional but people aren't always aware of it. And questions need to be open-ended where you're asking people to talk. If you ask closed-ended where it's a yes or no, then the conversation ends. But if you ask those questions like, can you tell me how? Can you tell me when? Can you tell me why? Can you tell me where and how this is the impact? These are open-ended. So some of the questions you want to ask that may be closed-ended would be a confirmation question. This is where you want to add credibility that you did your homework and you just want to validate, hey, am I on the right track? And then the other one is new business, new information. Is there any new developments or anything that's dynamic, revolutionary, evolutionary within their account that they would want to talk about? And the other one, which is attitudinal. This is excellent because logic rides on the back of emotion. How is this situation or question affecting that person personally? And can you get to the person's personal win as well as defining what is their business result they want to drive to? And at the end is getting that commitment. Now, commitment often means like, did I get the final contract? But when you understand the seven stages of the sales process, getting commitment could also be what is the next step or stage in the sales process that you want to advance to, because you know they're not ready yet. So, any questions so far? This is a lot of content and concept delivered here.
I don't have a
I got a
question, but I do have a comment because I had a big aha. Back in the day when I was in the Navy and I was a supply officer, the vendors would come and we literally called it the dog and pony show because they would do their tap dance and they would give their spiel, but they didn't ask us anything. They didn't try to find out what we were looking for or what we were needed. It was just a circus that came to town. And so we never felt like our it was rare that we felt like somebody was actually addressing what we needed. They were just pushing a product on it. So this is a great framework for getting out of that I have to just present idea.
Excellent. Thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing that thought and if you will, the epiphany refresher, I call it. Like, there's a relatable moment.
I,
So
I have
you,
I have a
yeah,
question.
Jeremy.
Yeah, so there's no other questions in the chat, but I have a question too. So going back to your other slide, your previous slide on the chart for the green sheet, I'm assuming that the pre-questions, the finding out what the client needs happens before you have that meeting, um, or are you trying to find it out during that meeting, or where does that happen?
So Jeremy, go ahead and ask that question again. So you give me the situation and you're asking
Yeah.
about how to qualify the questions, right?
Well, so you can you go back to that slide, please? Yeah. So this slide right here, we're already are looking for the buying influencer, the valid business reason, the sales, all this stuff. But we had, at what point are we talking to a client or somebody that we are trying to find out what they want and what their needs are? Where does that come in?
Well, where that comes in is when you have your green sheet ready, you bring it in with you on the sales call. And this is kind of like your tutorial, your cheat sheet on what your agenda is and what you want to ask. And ask it during there. But the idea of this green sheet is anticipating ahead of time what you want to ask and what you want to achieve and accomplish on that sales call with that individual.
So would in that understanding, would valid business reason be that time of asking and seeing what it is their needs are? Is that the time to do that?
That
Or
would be the
getting the
time.
information questionnaire framework
Correct.
question?
So everything on Jeremy, you bring a great point. The valid business reason would be very similar to like how you would open up a call. Very much like how I opened up this call. Hey, thank you for being here. My valid reason here is I want to help MSPs ready, aim, and sell in the space against MSPs. And the reason why I'm on the call today is to make sure that I provide you the tools, the process, and the resources to be successful. That's my valid business reason. And it's being intentional on there and knowing your audience and how you're going to be relatable. Did that help answer it? It's good.
Yes, yes, it did. Thank
Yeah, it's having that discipline ahead of time, and if you will, it's that mental practice of rehearsing it. So when you go in there, you are prepared. I mean, the area that you're in that I hear so many times with that we share is we've got non-technical people that are buying your expertise and they want to feel trust and understanding of the value of what they're paying for and why. And when you explain in too much detail of what your vernacular is, it could get lost. But when you could give it in their vernacular, understand what their valid business reason is, you want to help them probably do one of three things: grow, profit, and be predictable. That's what every business wants to achieve. But what you want to do specifically is address it in a way that's specific to them and the pain that you help them avoid or accomplish or fix. Thank you, Jeremy. That was excellent. And again, on the left-hand side is your preparation of like what it is who you're going into and what you want to be ready for. On the right-hand side, it's those questions you want to be ready to ask during your call. What information you want to gather from them, and how did you want to advance where you are in your current stage? For example, when you're doing a qualification and getting them to ready to do an assessment, or for the assessment and you want to get them to the, hey, I want to present my solution, and you want to make sure you have all the information necessary to be very complete and provide that value. So, I mean, Jeremy, you brought up a great point. Elizabeth, everybody, what we're trying to do here is go from that dog and pony of vendor come in with your dance card and get your 15 to 30 minutes of engagement to becoming a trusted advisor, being there longer and hearing more than you're telling, listening more than you're talking. And then not only that, but understanding where you're going so that next question you ask or the next piece of information you give gets you further along. And so the account strategy, your overall goal is really understanding, who these people are. Are they influencers? Did you develop a coach? Do you really understand what their role is and what level of influence that they have in the process? There's many times where I've gotten into the pitfall where if someone was giving me a lot of attention and talking, I thought I was winning, but I realized at the end of the day, they didn't have much influence, but I felt good that they were talking to me. Or I thought someone was a coach, but I found at the end of the day, they were giving me the same information they were giving every vendor. And how did I differentiate that? And I would love to ask this next question is, can anybody tell me here between an influencer and a coach at an account? Can anybody tell me the difference between the two? And Jeremy, if you see anything that pops up on the chat, I'm going to count on you to call it out. You don't have to tell me the name. We can keep everybody confidential and comfortable, but I'd love to hear what their vision is or what their interpretation of the two is. All right, I think I've given enough awkward silence, so I'll just give the answer if that works for you. An influencer could be someone you talk to, and they do have great influence over how the decision is being made and how the economic buyer will be receptive to making the final decision. A coach is someone who truly advocates for you and they're doing the actions on your behalf for you to be successful. And the reason why is usually there is a personal win in it for them that they need your solution to resolve an issue, a problem, or help them accomplish or avoid something. And it affects them personally. And they are going outside of their normal sphere of responsibility to advocate because they see that you have something that they need to help them. And that, my friend, is when you have a strong value exchange and you become a trusted advisor, when you get someone with high influence and they are your coach. So hopefully that little nugget was helpful because if you're like me, sometimes you fall into a pitfall where, gosh, this person spent a lot of time with me, but I didn't get the net result. And the question was, were they really my coach or not? And if so, how do I develop that coach? Now, the part we're going to transition here is our Fusey client relation management system. And I really want to emphasize this because you could go to sales classes and you could talk about the concepts. But if we don't have a method in your business to be intentional about capturing this information and driving that information to strategic action and results, all we're going to end up is where we were before, which is a stack of business cards, notes in a notebook, recalling off your memory, or maybe a spreadsheet, but something that's intentional. And again, where I'm professing here is you need to have not only a system in place, but you really need to have a foundation, a process that keeps it intentional. And the CRM, it's an active repository. It's not just something that you put in and get to later, but you actually put in there to help move you through the stages and move you through the relationship. It's intentionally helps you with strategic mapping because this is where you could take the concepts of the green sheet and put it in there to help you move along. And then it helps you with client relationship activities. Once they become a client, the next question is, what are you doing to grow, nurturing, getting referrals from them? And then it becomes your own trusted intelligence command center. And why I recommend leveraging a CRM, especially our Fusey system, is we went from a very undisciplined process where we thought we knew what we were doing because we were busy and exhausted at the end of the day and at the end of the week, but we really didn't find ourselves doing more than what we've been doing for maybe less than a handful of the same things that we've been doing. But by putting it in here, it gave us clarity, gave us more control, and it gave us a steady hand to know when we're intentionally using that greatest commodity we all have, which is time, are we efficiently using that time? And it tracks your opportunities. It helps you automate alerts and priorities, and it streamlines communications, and it gives that steady process. And what you're seeing here is like a typical dashboard of a CRM that should be giving you information, whether it be our product or others, but ours in particular. It will help you map out what your sales process is and where you're going next with that client and what you need to do. What I'd like to do now is I'm going to be jumping into, we've talked about prospecting, we've talked about sales preparation, we've talked about qualifying and talking to somebody. Did you understand the role that they played? Are they an influencer? Are they a coach? Are they a technical? Are they a user? Are they an economic buyer? Because each one of those will have a specific message you need to send. Did you uncover what you want to fix, avoid, or accomplish for them, or what they want to fix, avoid, accomplish for themselves? And were they able to clearly articulate what is their business result that is tied to a number, time, dollars, headcount? What is it that they want to achieve? What is the personal win that makes their lives better if they fix the situation, if they avoid a problem, if they accomplish their goal? What is it that they do? Now you come up with your proposal, and this comes into where do you go and what do you offer? And what we have to offer here, and we'll talk about it even further, is this is the bridge that helps talk about the technical, all the things you're doing behind the scenes that these non-technical people don't have any knowledge, right? They know that they bought a box, that you hit a button, it turns on, and there's software in there, and they command what they need to do for their business. And then they go ahead and they do their business, and they ask you to do the stuff in the back. My question for you is, what do you have to help articulate it? And our solution is the Cyber Tackle Box GRC, that compliance framework that tells them the governance, the regulation, the compliance, the who, what, where, and how, and the why of what they're doing, and what the risk is if they don't do it, and what the value is of what you are doing it. And quite frankly, this is a mechanism that helps you articulate what your services are. The final stage is once you understand what they're trying to fix or avoid or accomplish and what they do, and you understand like that dollar amount of growth or the dollar amount of the problem that it is causing them, you can now provide and present your financials because now there's value in what you're presenting. You understand the cost of their problem and the impact of their problem, or you could find out what is the resources needed for giving the growth and the limited resources you need to buy or provide that will give them this growth and this success. And that is value. That is a transfer of trust. That is where you're in the stage 5. And when you get the buy-in from that area, then you could go into stage 6, which is in a frank and fear-free manner, ask for the business. This is where you present your value over the cost of what they're being impacted by not resolving, not fixing, not accomplishing, and not avoiding what's out there. Elizabeth, this is great. How long does it take to get through all the stages? That answer is one of those that it's based on a number of factors. When you understand the buying influencer and their concept and you understand what they want to do, you will get through it faster than not if you understand that and you have them qualified. There are businesses that will tell you that based on having a CRM like Fusey, you will be able to have a more predictable manner to know, like, hey, if we bring in, let's say, 100 prospects and we qualify them and we assess that we know out of the 100, we're going to get probably about 20 presentations. And the 20 presentations, we're probably going to get 10 proposals. Out of the 10 proposals, we're probably going to get, 5 contracts or 3 contracts. And then you could put timelines associated with that based on who you talk to. There's no clear cut like percentage that I could give you without really understanding the business model, your client base, your market, etc. But what I can tell you is without a CRM, you'll never know the answer to that question. With a CRM, you'll be much more predictable. And not only that, but you'll be also a lot more efficient with how you apply your resources. You'll know who to spend your time with and who not to spend your time with. And that to me is equally as valuable one over the other. The final stage that we get into is that implementation, post-sales, and growth. Some people may also call this a stage 8, which is that ongoing customer success on what are you doing to reinforce the relationship with either business reviews, technical reviews on an interval. So just to give you an example, what we've seen as a best practice is within the first 30, 60, 90 days of a contract, every 30-day interval, there's a touch point to make sure that there's a optimization of what we're providing. And then after that, we get into quarterly. And then if it's an annual contract on the 11th month, we go in there and we do a technical and business review with that person. And we go down there and we say, hey, what is it you want to fix, avoid, or accomplish? What has been your greatest successes? What has been your largest hurdles? What is your greatest need and support you think you need from a training or what have you? And then the last one I'd like to know is what are ideas, innovations, or thoughts you have that can make it better, either between our organization as yours or something you noticed in yours that we can uncover and help you together. Again, it's a partnership mindset, and this is getting out of the way of having the next vendor come in and say, okay, I want to go get a quote, and here you go. So again, relying very heavily on a couple of tools that we talked about here. The 7 stages never really go away. You just get the new opportunity within that account or customer client that you are having a trusted relationship or the next prospect. And you continue to grow and you nurture it. But by having a process in place and having a CRM and offering a value proposition such as the cyber tackle box, you can then talk about, well, what's the mutual growth? What are the shared opportunities? What's your sustained value? How do you continuously have access, monitor, build your credibility, continue to have valid business reasons to engage, and deepen that transfer of trust? And again, with the CRM and having the right value proposition, like the cyber tackle box, you've got the ability to manage that relationship a lot more closely to make it a win-win relationship. And it's taking a lot of energy and effort to get that first client or get that client. Now let's be intentional about keeping them. No different than any other relationship that's important in your life. You got to continue to cultivate and nurture it. So in summary here, as we get to the 45th minute here, what we had delivered in summary is there's 3 components. We talked about the 7-stage sales funnel. We talked about being intentional on your preparation and what you're doing before and what you're going to do during your sales call and your interaction with that client. And the other piece is having that value-based selling system with offering a compliance tool, having a CRM like Fusey to help manage this relationship and get away from the scraps of paper, the business cards. Jeremy, I see a raised hand and I think it's yours.
It was. We did have a question on here. How long does it take to get through all the stages?
Yeah, I saw that was asked, and like I said, um, there's no clear-cut answer on how to get through it. I could tell you when you go through stages 1 through 4 or 1 through 3, those could be relatively short, right? Stage 1, you're prospecting, and you'll know whether they respond to you or not. When you have your qualifying conversation, remember you're qualifying them as a client as quick as you're qualifying. But when
Yeah,
you
so
get to the other stages, like
there's no set length of time. It's just the conversation that you're going to have, basically.
correct,
Okay. All
it's
right.
it's
No
a
problem.
conversation you're going to have not only between us and you to help you with your process, but it's also a conversation you want to weave in on your dialogue with your opportunity and ask them what is their timeline, what is their process, what do they typically do, and how do they make a decision? For example, we all know that most governments will, most federal contracts are like a 5-year increment. And there, when an award is issued, it's very unlikely that you're going to want to go in there in years 1 and 2 because you're just still embedded in our contract. But we know in year 3.5, 4, you want to get in there because they're at the end of their contract and you want to start presenting your solution, understanding their needs, and getting ready before they go to bid. With some of these other smaller businesses, it could be a shorter timeline based on the base of need and their amount of hurt. I mean, before I got on the call today, we had a client, their pants are on fire. They have a problem that is impeding their ability to do business. They have a trigger right now that they need to fix it right away. So that timeline is going to be greatly shortened than someone who might be, shopping the market and doing their market research. But having that information allows you to prioritize who do you spend your time with. And when you go back and have that thing, have that mechanism that triggers when to go back and touch base with somebody and feel comfortable knowing, okay, I could table them and go back later. Hopefully that helped generate a little bit of fodder on that and help answer that question.
Good.
All right. So I would love, to get some input now that we've presented and this is what we've covered here in our presentation. I'd love to get some feedback or examples on what's happening in your space on, how we could use the next, 10 to 15 minutes of your time on this call to maybe help advance your sales process, your contact, your client relationship management. How can we help you with the opportunities that you're being challenged faced with?
One of the things that I'm struggling with is we have a lot of salespeople that understand the sales theory. They're not cyber specific, so they're non-technical in nature, and they're trying to sell to technical people, and it's a multi-level sale. So you've got your business people, and then you've got your technical people, and our sales people that are not technical are struggling with the technical people. So the technical wants to be sold to by technical, but we have our technical people doing technical work. So we're having a little bit of a culture issue because the non-technical people are having difficulty getting to the level of knowledge to get those sales done. So that's where we struggle. It's just really hard for the sales guys.
Yeah, so Kara, I would just say that is a brilliant scenario here. And if you're amenable to it, I could give you a couple of examples what I've seen other technical sales, whether it be in IT or not IT, but it could be in healthcare, it could be in engineering, And if you're amenable to it, I could give you a couple of opportunities or examples to think about. And if you want to go deeper and wider on that thought, let's get and have a conversation that would be pertinent to you. But Kara, for this scenario, what I would say is it's very common that organizations hire people like me that are like they're your door opener. We're the ones that get the door open. We're the hunters. We get the appointments and we set. And then when you get that attention, the focus, you know, there's two ways that you could do it. One is um, if there is a common technical objection or common technical hurdle that's out there, we need to get your technical person to create a training module for that salesperson that they can reach out and have a resource and almost like have a cheat sheet or a card or be trained in that area for those area and go to like the second level. The other area is that we take one of your technical people and they have like a liaison, and their role is to help support salespeople on technical calls when they have, but you need to have a qualified appointment of who's in the audience. Do they have money to spend? What is the time frame? Because before you pull that someone off that project, you want to make sure it's worth your while to take that technical person out of the technical role. The other part is you make a technical person part of your sales roster, and they now support anywhere between 3 to 7 or 3 to 5 salespeople that are setting appointments, and they're the go-to as a technical sales subject matter expert. And these are the people that usually have very good people skills. They communicate well. They in front of different people, and they do the technical. They know how to kind of like be dry when it needs to be dry, and they know how to be a little bit more open in dialogue when they need to. Um, and and I could easily go into that further with you in another conversation and go wider, but I see it one of three ways. If it's common and it's predictable that you're seeing this often, then I would say let's come up with a training program that supports it and give like an immediate resource that these salespeople could go to and have it armed and ready. And it may be marketing collateral that you develop and say, hey, we understand that when we come across this, this is very common in what we see. And what I would say is you use a spin technique, which is a situation, common situation that we see, the problem that occurs, the implication or the impact that happens when the problem is not resolved, and then what we see most people need in order to resolve it, and then they close them for the next call, which is either bringing in an expert or bringing in the solution. Did that help, Kara?
Um, Sort of, but not really. The guys that we're using are oil and gas guys. They're deeply technical in the industry, so they have industry experience. They just don't have cyber. We're a small company. I don't have 5 people. I don't have 2 people. I don't have one. So I have a couple of guys that are doing cyber in addition to selling drilling fluid, chemical fluid, pumps, screws, widgets, and cyber. So they're selling a bunch of different things to oil and gas customers in addition to cyber, and that's how we're in. It's a very closed environment. If you don't know somebody for like 20 years and they're brothers and sisters, you don't even get in front of people. So it's kind of a struggle. I'm the technical business person and I'm also the CEO. So I'm acting with a whole bunch of hats until we're properly funded to support a full-time sales initiative. We have all of our marketing material, but it's very lean. And until we get that breath of air, I'm hand training these guys, and that's where our obstacles are. It's not where I can just, if I had money to just throw a couple $100,000 at each person, I wouldn't have any issues. But I
Hmm.
don't have that. So for us, that's where we stick, because our guys are talking about all kinds of different things with their prospects, and cyber is just one of the things, the many things. So I don't have a dedicated guy that's like 24/7 for Amolite. Just that's not what I have right now. So that's where we are in our growth and development for our company.
Yeah. Then, Kara, what I would probably propose then running a lean organization. And again, it doesn't have to end. This conversation doesn't have to end when this calls. We could set up time and have a dialogue because I thrive in this problem solving, and I'm in a very similar situation where I'm a non-technical guy. and I work with technical people. And what it comes down to is we make sure that we have the opportunity qualified and fully vetted. And I don't think it's going to take a lot of money to make sure that before we pull somebody out, that we bring someone in and it's worth their while to have that dialogue. And it's something that's ongoing and refining. And I find over time is that you get some predictability over it, and we could start to alleviate some of the stress on that, the one or two people in that area. But it is a struggle. It is a problem, especially when you're running in a very lean organization. You don't have room for headcount. It sounds to me like a lot of people have to be utility players, and have multiple roles. And it's the same thing in our organization here, that we do, and it's others that we've done in other organizations that are small and lean. It's part of the excitement of being in this environment. Rather than being matrix and say, "Oh, I don't do that. It's out of my scope." Hand the baton, forget it. Tell me when you did it. Now it's like, no, I'm engaged and I got to see this all the way through. And it's built into the incentive program that someone stays involved and sees it all the way through, whether they have the expertise or not. It's their job to bring that expertise in and advance that sales process and make sure the right resources are there.
Yeah, and this is the thing is they're non-technical, so I'm training them on how to sell cybersecurity, and that's in the prospecting phase. That's kind of where they live, and they're out talking to people all day. That's what they do is business development, but cyber is new to them, and that's pretty much across the country. It's kind of a new thing to be selling cyber in Canada. They've sold infrastructure forever, but cyber as a managed security service is new. So teaching them the skill set to advance those conversations is proving challenging. It's easy for them to sell mud. They've been selling mud for a long time. It's easy for them to sell mats. They've been selling mats for a long time. They've been selling iron for a long time. But IT is a different animal. So it's a different kind of training. At least that's my experience so far. And
Yeah.
and so getting them, and I've spent like on one guy, I've spent 2 years training him. And he's a great salesman on the product side. He's just terrible on the IT side. So I
Yeah.
just, get somebody else. Well, yeah, I could do that. But he's got the connections and the relationships. So he can get meetings like that. It's just getting it advanced down the line is where there's a bit of a struggle. So, and that's kind of normal for here. It's all about relationships and who you know. Nobody gets, and especially for cyber, if they don't know you, you don't even get a meeting. So it's like there's so much nepotism here. It's not even funny. So you have to have these guys. It's not like you can't have them. You have to have them.
No, I've seen it in many other situations. Again, I don't want to quote my age, but I will just tell you, I've been around before cell phones were available to give out to sales reps. Laptops were non-existent. There were no reason to hand it out to a field sales rep. And your CRM was a business card stapled to an index card put in a shoebox. And that's how far back I go. And I get it. And I've seen this happen through the evolution of technology. When I sold at Xerox, there was probably about 30 of us that went out there and were just cold door knockers, and there were 3 or 4 people that were our technical people when we got it to a certain level, and they would give that presentation on the technical end. Um, and then it came down to the closing it. And what you've got is a what I would call it's kind of like it's I would look at it almost like a volleyball team. You needed someone who's going to pitch it up and bring the technical person to be the middle guy who's going to hit it. And then you need someone like yourself who's going to be the closer and get it over the net, smack it. That's the way I see it. But it's coordinating in a way that protects your time and resources, that you don't have somebody holding the ball too long. You got to keep in the air and spike it. That's the way I see it. It's not an easy problem, but it's a common one. And those that perfect it and have that harmony and get the compensation down right and have those dialogue going. And what you find is, this is what I found is over time, Kara, is that is that the culture, the IT people become more salespeople, and the salespeople get more IT expertise by having intentional dialogue and intentional meetings. And I don't think you need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars as much as say, you know what? We're going to dedicate a half hour every week or an hour every week, and everybody's got to come to the table, and you got an agenda of what we need to drive and what's a common problem, and you get the team around it, and then you build it. That's the other reason why I like a CRM or the green sheet is when you're getting objections or you're getting information back and you're collecting it, it gives you an opportunity to put a game plan together and attack it. And what you've got there is you're seeing it. You get salespeople that take it, get the door open, but there's got to be, I would say, no more than 10, no less than three common IT cyber type objections that we could triage together and come up with where we get to some tertiary. And I believe that you probably have the client base that you could go and test fire some of your theories with and say, hey, would this help? Would this be acceptable? Would this triage it enough that we could bring someone in, or is this triage enough that we could close the business? But great dialogue, and I welcome you to continue the conversation with me. I love talking about sales models and business models for going. Um, so to wrap it up here real quick, thank you for joining our first of the three. This is my contact information if you want to have a dialogue further about any of the topics that we had. Kara, again, I can't thank you enough for being a highly engaged participant, Jeremy and Elizabeth. For the other folks that were on that had to leave, I hope that this was very helpful as well. And we'll be on the call again next Tuesday, same time. So other than that, have a great rest of the day, and thank you again for your time and your resource for being here.